I'm going to tell you the one fatal flaw that could erase all of Malaysia's success. You see, everyone loves to talk about the Asian miracle, how countries like South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore went from dirt poor to global powerhouses in just one lifetime. But there's a secret level in this economic game, a point where success actually turns into a trap. And right now, Malaysia is standing right at the edge of it. They went from selling basic rubber and tin to building cutting-edge microchips. It's an insane story. But if they take one wrong step now, their entire future, their entire dream of becoming a truly rich, developed nation could collapse. You need to understand how this trap works because it's not just a Malaysian problem. It's a blueprint for why so many developing nations are doomed to stay stuck forever. For decades, economists around the world have looked at Malaysia and nodded. They had the right textbook plan. They industrialized, they built world-class roads, they opened their doors to foreign companies, and they got rich fast. They have skyscrapers, huge ports, a booming tourism sector, and they build and package 13% of the world's microchips. This is a story of total economic transformation. In the 1970s, the average Malaysian made barely more than their neighbors in Thailand or the Philippines. Today, Malaysia's gross national income per person is over 11,000 US dollars. That puts them squarely in the high middle income bracket, almost out of the developing world completely. You'd think they should be popping champagne bottles. But instead, their economic planners are feeling a deep, quiet dread. The thing they fear is called the middle income trap. It's not a sudden crash. It's a slow, agonizing grind where a country gets stuck too rich to compete with cheap labor countries like Vietnam or Cambodia, but too poor and uninnovative to compete with giants like Germany, Japan, or the United States. They've done the easy part of the climb, and now they are face to face with their hardest, steepest wall, and history shows that most countries fail to make it over this wall. As videos about that wall, we're going to trace Malaysia's stunning climb. Look at the precise moment they stepped onto this deadly economic ledge and figure out if they have any chance of escaping before it's too late. The core problem for Malaysia is that the recipe for their success in the 1980s and 1990s is the exact thing that is threatening to doom them now. Think about how Malaysia got rich. After gaining independence, they realized that just selling raw materials, rubber, tin, palm oil was a dead end. The money was always in the finished product. So Malaysia's leaders, especially Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, decided they needed to become a factory floor for the world. But they didn't have the cash or the skills. So they used a genius strategy, foreign direct investment, or FDI. They literally went out and begged foreign companies, Japanese, American, European, to come set up their massive factories on Malaysian soil. They offered incredible tax breaks, they built huge industrial zones, and they promised a stable, organized workforce. And the global corporations listened. Look at the 1980s. Sony came. Panasonic came. Big automotive companies like Mitsubishi came. These companies didn't just build things, they brought the know-how. They taught Malaysian workers how to assemble complicated electronics, how to run assembly lines, and how to manage global supply chains. This was the era of the Look East policy, where Malaysia modeled itself after the massive industrial success of Japan. It worked perfectly. The money poured in. Factories popped up everywhere, especially in the electrical and electronic sector. This process is called catch-up growth. It's easy and fast because you aren't inventing anything new. You're just copying and building what someone else already invented. It's a guaranteed path to go from a low-income to a middle-income country, but here's where the trap snaps shut. When a Japanese company builds a factory in Malaysia, the profits and the intellectual property, the blueprints, the inventions, the cutting-edge secrets usually go back to Tokyo. The Malaysian worker learns to assemble, test, and package, but they don't learn how to invent the next generation of that product. They become masters of execution, but slaves to innovation. Fast forward to today. Malaysia's labor costs are now significantly higher than, say, a worker in Hanoi, Vietnam, or Jakarta, Indonesia. This is a good thing for the people, but a huge problem for the country. If you are a foreign company like Intel and your only reason for being in Malaysia is cheap assembly, the moment Malaysia's wages rise too high, you simply move your factory and your jobs to the next cheapest place. The middle income trap is the moment a country loses its competitive edge in cheap labor, but hasn't developed the necessary edge in advanced innovation. They are stuck in the middle, and it is a crisis of identity. To understand the danger of this trap, we have to look at two things: the history of nations that fell into it, and the specific numbers that show Malaysia's struggle right now. The most classic and heartbreaking example of the middle-income trap is Latin America, specifically countries like Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico. These were some of the most promising economies in the world in the mid-20th century. In the 1950s and 60s, Argentina was basically as rich as France. Mexico was booming. They followed a different but equally effective catch-up plan called import substitution industrialization. Basically, they built factories to make products for themselves instead of relying on imports. For a while, it was a huge success. They built car factories, steel mills, and chemical plants. They were absolutely convinced they were on the path to becoming a developed nation. But their growth stopped dead. Why? Because they never learned to truly innovate. Their industries were protected from foreign competition, so they never had to get better, cheaper, or smarter. They just kept building the same old car or the same old appliance. Meanwhile, countries like Japan and Germany were locked in intense global competition, forcing them to constantly invent the next big thing. When the global economy changed in the 1970s and 80s, these Latin American giants suddenly found themselves with high costs, outdated technology, and massive debt. Their economy stagnated, wages stopped rising. Today, Argentina is still struggling to recapture its former glory. They have been stuck in the middle income level for over 50 years. This is the doomed fate Malaysia is desperately trying to avoid. Now, let's look at the numbers for Malaysia, and you'll see the exact profile of a country staring into the abyss. When economists measure a country's complexity and innovation, they don't look at how much rubber they sell. They look at something called the Economic Complexity Index, or ECI. This index essentially measures how many different, complicated, and unique things a country exports. Exporting bananas is simple. Exporting a specific type of microchip used in medical devices is complex. Malaysia is a solid country on the ECI. They rank around 25th in the world. That's good. They are doing better than places like India or Brazil. But they are way behind the countries they want to emulate. Japan is first, South Korea is fourth, and Germany is third. The real crisis is in the spending. To jump from middle income to high income, you must transition from being a low-cost manufacturer to being a global innovator. This takes massive investment in research and development, or R&D. The rich club, the OECD nations, usually spend between 2.5% and 3.5% of their entire GDP on R&D. The biggest spenders, like South Korea and Israel, spend over 4.5%. Malaysia? They are stuck around 1.0% of their GDP on R&D. Think about that for a second. They are spending less than a third of what is required to generate the next big wave of economic growth. They are still relying on foreign companies to bring the blueprints, but they are getting too expensive for the assembly job. And where are the foreign companies going? They are rushing into a country like Vietnam. Vietnam's exports are exploding. Samsung, the Korean giant, has poured billions into Vietnam, making it a critical hub for phones and electronics. Why? Because Vietnam is still cheap and still in the easy phase of catch-up growth. Malaysia's wages are roughly 3 times higher than Vietnam's. If Malaysia doesn't start inventing things that are 3 times more valuable, the jobs have to leave. It's an unavoidable economic law. This is the core fatal flaw that will lead to stagnation if they don't change their path. The middle-income trap isn't just about math. It's also about politics and national strategy. And here, Malaysia has another problem that makes the climb even harder: internal policies. After a terrible race riot in 1969, the Malaysian government introduced the new economic policy, or NEP. Its goal was to eliminate poverty and restructure society to give the majority Malay population, called Bumiputera, a bigger slice of the economic pie. In many ways, it was a success. Poverty was dramatically reduced. But the implementation of the NAP created a major, invisible brake on the economy. It led to policies like ethnic quotas for business licenses, university admission, and government jobs. What does this have to do with the middle-income trap? Everything. To climb out of the trap, you need the absolute smartest, most talented people in the entire country, regardless of their background, working on the toughest, highest value problems, R&D, advanced engineering, and complex financial services. You need a meritocracy that rewards pure talent. But when a country uses ethnic or religious criteria to decide who gets a top job or who gets a government contract, it often means the best possible person for the job is overlooked for someone who is simply the right ethnicity. This creates what economists call misallocation of talent. Imagine you are a brilliant Malaysian engineer, but because of your background, you can to get the government funding or the top university spot you need to launch a high-tech startup. You might leave. This is known as brain drain. It is an internal wound that bleeds away the exact type of human capital, the talent that is needed to escape the trap. The NEP, while successful in its social goal of reducing disparity, is now, ironically, working against the national economic goal of becoming a high-income, innovative economy. It forces the country to climb the economic ladder with one hand tied behind its back, making the risk of a permanent crisis even higher. We are now at the critical moment in Malaysia's history. They understand the threat. They see the writing on the wall. They know they can't compete with cheap labor anymore, and they are terrified of becoming the next Brazil. So, what is their desperate last-ditch plan? It's called the New Industrial Master Plan 2030, or NIMP 2030. This is their grand strategy, their all-or-nothing bet to jump over the wall of the middle-income trap. The plan has three main pillars, and they are focusing with laser precision on the one area where Malaysia already has a global foothold: semiconductors. The world runs on microchips. Every phone, every car, every washing machine has chips. And right now, there's a global race, known as the Chip War, to build more chips outside of China and Taiwan. This is Malaysia's huge, sudden opportunity. While they don't design many chips, they are absolute masters of packaging and testing. Every chip that goes into your phone likely passed through a massive, high-tech Malaysian factory for its final quality check and assembly. Under the NIMP 2030, Malaysia is making a massive, urgent push to move from just packaging to doing the more complex, higher-value work of R&D and sophisticated design. They have attracted huge new investments. Companies like Intel are pouring billions into Malaysia to expand their factories and create the necessary infrastructure for this high-end work. The government is also trying to fix the R&D spending issue, aiming to raise national R&D expenditure to 2.0% of GDP by 2025. That is still not enough to join the rich club, but it's a necessary step. The stakes could not be higher. If they succeed in becoming a global, indispensable powerhouse for high-value semiconductor work, they will leapfrog the trap, create tens of thousands of high-wage jobs, and genuinely become a developed nation. But if the investment isn't enough, if the R&D targets are missed, or if the internal policies continue to hamstring their brightest talent, the fatal outcome is inevitable. The foreign investment will dry up, the jobs will go to cheaper Vietnam, and Malaysia will settle into a long, slow period of stagnation, forever looking up at the high-income club that they almost joined. The story of Malaysia is not just a tale of success. It's a living lesson in economic physics. They executed the first half of the textbook perfectly. They went from poverty to middle income through sheer industrial force and smart policy. But now they face the hardest choice: to evolve or to die. They can't just do the same thing harder. They have to do something completely different. They have to change from being the world's best copycat to being a genuine innovator. The middle income trap is a slow death, not a sudden one. It's the creeping realization that your wages are too high for the work you do. Malaysia has identified the threat. They have created the Plan NIMP 2030, and they have placed their big bet on semiconductors. The next 10 years will be the ultimate test. If they can triple their R&D spending, if they can unleash the full potential of all their people, and if they can compete with the likes of Taiwan in high-value manufacturing, then their dream of true wealth will come true. But if they fail, the success of the last 50 years will fade, and their economic crisis will deepen into a permanent, frustrating ceiling. If you want to understand which country in Asia is going to win this critical race, you need to watch what happens next in Kuala Lumpur. To see which Asian economy is poised to take Malaysia's place, subscribe and watch our next deep dive now.